The first thing Karen Stone ever tried to steal from me wasn't my house, it was my grief. She saw a widower alone at an old lake place in the Carolina mountains and figured I'd be soft-tired, easy to scare. What she got instead was the worst kind of problem for a bully, a man with paperwork patience and absolutely nothing left to lose. When I bought that house, I wasn't chasing some grand dream. I was trying to survive my own life. Hannah had been gone less than a year, and the silence after a loss like that, it doesn't sound peaceful at first. It sounds wrong. Too wide, too empty, like the world forgot a piece of itself and expects you to keep walking anyway. I didn't want sympathy. I didn't want neighbors dropping by with casseroles and sad eyes. I wanted wood that needed sanding boards, that needed replacing a roofline I could stare at until my head stopped replaying hospital sounds. The house sat at the end of a half-forgotten road tucked beside a clear stretch of lake with tall pines all around it, like the place had been trying to hide for years. It had been empty a long time. Moss on the steps, warped deck boards, windows filmed over the whole place, carrying that tired smell old homes get when nobody laughs in them anymore. To me, it looked perfect. The sale was clean, private, legal from top to bottom. Cash deal, recorded deed, title, insurance, survey, county records, the whole stack. Most important part, the property sat outside the boundary of the Clear Pine HOA down in the valley. Not near it, maybe not in spirit. Outside. Entirely. That mattered to me because I had spent enough years dealing with rules and people and meetings. I wanted one place on this earth where nobody could tell me what color a mailbox ought to be. So I got to work. I rebuilt the deck, cleaned years of grime off the siding, refinished the floors, fixed the dock, turned an old shed out back into a little guest cabin Hannah had always talked about. I built a stone fire ring myself, one rock at a time, and some nights I'd sit by the water with a beer and listen to frogs start up after dark. No committees, no petty notices, no laminated nonsense nailed to trees. Just woods, water, and quiet. That was the whole point. For a while, that's exactly what I had. Then one Friday evening, I heard music carrying across the lake. Loud, sloppy, drunk kid music, the kind that sounds like somebody's making bad decisions in flip-flops. I walked down toward my dock and found a dozen teenagers sprawled across my place like they were at a rental. Beer cans on the boards I'd rebuilt, trash in my fire ring. 2 boys launching themselves off my dock and 1 kid in expensive swim trunks acting like he owned the moon. I told them to leave. Most of them scattered, but that one stayed, smirking, vaping, swaying a little, looking at me like I was the one trespassing. He said, "Relax, man. My mom said we can use this place whenever." That sentence told me more than he meant it to. I called the sheriff. By the time deputies showed up, the crowd had thinned, but the kid was still there, still running his mouth. His name was Randall Stone. The next morning I asked around town and got that little pause people give when a name explains too much. Karen Stone's boy. Clear Pine HOA president. Thinks she owns the whole mountain. I laughed. Because what else do you do when somebody tells you a woman in press slacks thinks she can annex your lake house by attitude alone? I had the deed in a fireproof safe. I had county records. I had a survey. I had law on my side. I figured this was just one spoiled kid with too much confidence and not enough supervision. I was wrong. Karen showed up 3 days later and you could feel trouble step out of the SUV before she did. She came up my porch in heels, sharp enough to stab through hardwood, holding a red folder like it contained divine truth. Didn't admire the house, didn't say hello, just looked at me and said she was there regarding the property I was currently occupying. Like I was camping illegally in my own damn life. Then she told me the house had once been intended for her son, through some old community understanding that it had been sold improperly, that morally it belonged with Clear Pine, and that she was giving me 30 days to vacate before legal action began. You ever hear something so stupid it takes your brain a second to catch up? That was me standing there with deck oil on my hands, just blinking at this woman while she tried to claim my house with the legal force of a bedtime story. I went inside, got my binder, and handed her everything: deed, parcel maps, title documents, county confirmation that my land had never been part of her HOA. I told her real calm that if her son wanted a lake house, he could go find one somewhere else. She didn't even look at the papers. That was the first sign this wasn't about law. This was about force pressure theater, the kind of fraud that hopes you'll fold before anyone checks the facts. Before she left, she stuck a wooden stake in the dirt near my gate and taped a sign to it that said the property was under Clear Pine Community Review. No county seal, no official stamp, just pure arrogance. After that, things started arriving. fake invoices for community infrastructure services, notices tucked under rocks on my porch, warnings that I was using shared amenities I'd never touched. I drove straight to the county records office where Nancy, a clerk with bifocals and the soul of an old hunting knife, pulled the overlay map and pointed to my parcel sitting clean outside the HOA boundary. They've tried this before, she told me. Didn't work then either. I made copies of everything, certified, laminated some of it because at that point I was annoyed enough to get decorative. Then one morning before sunrise, I woke to engines on the gravel. 2 moving trucks. I stepped outside in boots and jeans and saw drivers standing there with clipboards, my address printed on the forms. Behind them, out of a black SUV, came Randall Stone carrying breakfast in one hand, wearing sunglasses like he was arriving at a beach house his parents bought for graduation. He grinned at me and said, "Told you I was moving in." I almost admired the stupidity of it. Not the cruelty, not the entitlement, just the raw, shining idiocy. He really thought if he showed up with furniture, reality would adjust itself around his confidence. I told the drivers to turn around. Randall called me a squatter. I called the sheriff. Deputy Wilkes got there fast. Looked at my documents, looked at Randall, looked back at me and said, "Yeah, you're solid." 5 minutes later, Randall was in the back of a cruiser still trying to argue while holding onto his breakfast like it might testify for him. The movers backed out apologizing. That should have ended it. Instead, it made Karen mean. Suddenly there were lies online from fake accounts, messages calling me unstable, dangerous, a thief. Notes appeared on my truck, my gate, my mailbox. Somebody stole one of my trail cameras. Somebody stood in the trees at night with a flashlight. Then things turned uglier. My mailbox got ripped out and tossed in the creek. Fishing line was stretched ankle-high across the path to my dock. My boat rope had been sliced clean. And the worst one, I found a hidden camera mounted in the tree line aimed right at my bedroom window. That was the moment something cold settled in me. Up to then, I'd still been thinking like a reasonable man dealing with unreasonable people. That camera changed the math. It wasn't petty anymore. It wasn't just HOA nonsense. It was surveillance, intimidation, a campaign. I went to the sheriff's office with photos, video, timestamps, police reports, all of it. Sergeant Ellison took one look at the evidence and said, "You've got a real problem on your hands." Then she said the words I'd been waiting to hear: felony exposure if we could tie that camera back to someone. By then I'd hired a lawyer, Hank Walden, broad-shouldered former prosecutor, built like he'd been carved out of courthouse steps. He looked through my file and said, "Good, they're overplaying." That's when the story turned. A man from inside Clear Pine reached out to me. Adam, younger guy, lived down there, worked remote, had the look of somebody who'd bought into a quiet mountain community and accidentally discovered a live-action dictatorship. He said Karen had called an emergency board meeting and he thought I should know what was being said. He recorded it for me. That footage was better than any gift I could have asked for. Karen stood in front of the board holding up a so-called letter from the former owner, Wallace Haskins, claiming he had always wanted the house to pass to the Stone family. The thing looked ridiculous. No proper date, no notary, no witness, shaky signature written in the kind of font people use when they want fake things to feel serious. And still, some of those idiots nodded along like she was reading scripture. Now here's the twist she never saw coming. Wallace Haskins was still alive. I drove out to the hospice facility where he was staying. He remembered me. Remembered the house too. When I showed him the letter, his face changed in a way I won't forget. Not confusion, offense, deep personal offense. He told me Karen had tried a year earlier to pay him to say the place should go to her family. He'd told her no in language much rougher than mine. I asked if he'd say that on camera. He gave me a full statement, then signed an affidavit the next day with a notary right there beside him. Clean dated, airtight. The kind of truth that doesn't wiggle. From there, the walls started closing in. More fake notices came. Some clown in a reflective vest showed up pretending to inspect drainage. My cameras caught him sneaking back after dark. Hank filed for an injunction. Then Luck, beautiful dumb Luck, stepped in wearing Randall Stone's face. Randall got arrested for DUI 2 counties over. His car was impounded. His laptop was taken with it. And on that laptop, synced right there in the cloud like a confession gift wrapped by a moron, were draft files for the fake Haskins letter. Metadata showed it had been created and edited by Karen. Revision history notes everything. One line literally reminded somebody to print it on aged paper. When Hank called me with that news, I sat down on my porch and laughed so hard I scared a bird off the railing. After that, it moved fast. We filed suit, fraud, harassment, defamation, trespass, invasion of privacy, interference with title. We attached every damn thing. The fake invoices, the hidden camera, the meeting footage, Wallace's affidavit, Randall's moving truck stunt. The judge signed the temporary restraining order fast enough to make Karen dizzy. She responded the only way people like her do when cornered with more lies. Flyers everywhere, smear pieces, edited photos. One night somebody tore up my yard with a truck and painted HOA or War across my retaining wall. Sergeant Ellison came out, looked at it, and said, "That's the last line." Court day came heavy and gray. I wore the same charcoal suit I'd worn to Hannah's funeral, not because I wanted drama, because that was the last day I'd stood in a room and felt that kind of finality. Karen sat there in a navy suit, rigid, angry, still trying to look in control. Randall looked like a man who'd just learned consequences are real. Hank came loaded for war. Nancy testified. Deputy Wilkes testified. Adam played the board meeting video. Wallace's recorded statement filled the courtroom. Then Hank held up the document history from Randall's laptop and asked why a letter supposedly written years earlier had been created on that kid's computer just months ago. Randall said his mom used his laptop sometimes. Hank asked, "Does she often impersonate elderly men in legal documents?" I swear even the judge enjoyed that one. Karen tried to call it stewardship, community protection, historic continuity. Judge Martinez cut right through her. Asked if forging documents, stalking a homeowner, sabotaging property, and trying to seize land outside her jurisdiction counted as stewardship now. Karen had no answer for that. The ruling was brutal, clean, and beautiful. No HOA claim, no jurisdiction, fraud confirmed, harassment confirmed, trespass, surveillance, defamation, emotional distress, all of it. Karen got hit personally for damages, the HOA got hit too, and the county was ordered to permanently note my property as excluded from any present or future HOA authority. Permanent injunction, 500 feet, done. And then because karma sometimes likes a second act, the prosecutor picked up the criminal side. A week later, in steady cold rain, they walked Karen out in cuffs. Not movie rain. Mean little rain. The kind that flattens your hair and soaks your collar. She still looked offended, like being arrested was rude. Randall shuffled behind her, staring at the ground. Fraud, fabricated evidence, conspiracy, criminal trespass. The whole rotten pile had finally come due. Clear Pine collapsed not long after. Residents turned on each other. Board members ran for cover. People who'd nodded along suddenly discovered their conscience. Funny how that works. I repaired the wall, replaced the mailbox, repainted the guest cabin, took my time with it. No rush anymore. That's the lesson I carried out of all this, and I learned it late. There are people who mistake calm for weakness, grief for softness, decency for surrender. They think if they keep pushing, decent people will step aside just to keep the peace. What they never understand is that some of us choose peace very carefully, and when you come for it, we fight like hell. Now the lake is quiet again. Most mornings I sit on the dock with coffee and listen to the frogs. Adam stops by sometimes with bread his wife bakes. We talk about weather, fishing, stupid county gossip, anything but Karen Stone. Above my front door there's a hand-burned sign I made from an old plank of wood. It says, "No means no, even if you run the HOA." That still makes me smile. So let me ask you something. When somebody uses power paperwork and public pressure to take what isn't theirs, do you still call it a misunderstanding? Or do you call it what it is? And if you've ever dealt with neighbors' boards or petty tyrants who thought rules made them kings, tell me how it ended and whether karma got there on time.